help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Please like the video and share your thoughts on the video. Your feedback helps make the contents better. Now let's get to the story.
I stood in my own office, well, formerly my office, watching my wife of 8 years tell me to pack my things and get out. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the smug smile playing at the corners of her perfectly painted lips. "Security will escort you out if you're not gone in 10 minutes, Elena said, her voice carrying that new edge of authority she'd picked up somewhere between her father's funeral and this exact moment 4 days later. "I'm sorry, but the company needs to move in a new direction." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I nodded slowly, taking in the sight of her behind that massive oak desk, her father's desk, wearing a power suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. She looked like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. And maybe she had. "Just like that?" I asked. 8 years of marriage, 6 years of busting my ass for this company, and you're firing me 4 days after your father dies?" She had the decency to look away, but only for a second. "It's business, Marcus. Nothing personal." Nothing personal. Right. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 34 years old, and I'm apparently an idiot. At least that's what I've been telling myself for the past 72 hours since I discovered what my wife had really been up to. But let me back up a bit, because this story doesn't start in that office. It starts 6 years earlier, when I was young, stupid, and believed in things like love and loyalty. I met Elena Castellano at a charity gala I had no business attending. I was 28, she was 26, and she had this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We hit it off immediately. She was beautiful, driven, came from money but claimed she wanted to make her own way in the world. I was a software engineer who just sold a cybersecurity startup for enough money to make me comfortable but not quite wealthy. We got married 10 months later. Her father, Richard Castellano, owned Castellano Logistics, a mid-sized shipping and warehousing company that was doing okay but not great. The old man was traditional, stubborn, and deeply suspicious of technology. After the wedding, he offered me a job. Not out of kindness, I think, but because Elena had convinced him the company needed to modernize or die. I accepted because I loved his daughter and thought I could help. For 6 years, I worked 70-hour weeks. I rebuilt their entire IT infrastructure, implemented automated inventory systems, developed proprietary logistics software that cut their operating costs by 38%, and basically dragged Castellano Logistics kicking and screaming into the 21st century. The company went from pulling in $12 million a year to over $45 million. I didn't do it alone, of course, but I was the architect. Richard never quite warmed up to me. I think he resented that his daughter had married an Asian guy instead of one of the Italian-American boys from the neighborhood, but he respected results. 2 years ago, when the company's value had tripled, he pulled me aside at a family dinner. "You've done good work, Marcus," he'd said, which from him was basically a declaration of eternal love. "I want to make sure you're taken care of." What he didn't tell me, what he couldn't tell me because the old bastard dropped dead of a heart attack 3 weeks ago, was what he'd actually done to take care of me. But I found out, thanks to a manila envelope that arrived at my apartment yesterday from his attorney. Standing in that office, watching Elena check her watch like I was wasting her precious time, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not quite anger, more like clarity. "I'll be out in 5 minutes," I said quietly. She nodded, already turning her attention back to the papers on her desk, dismissing me. "Security will walk you out. Company policy." I packed my things in a cardboard box while a bored security guard named Dave watched from the doorway. Pictures of Elena and me from happier times. A coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Husband" that she'd given me as a joke. My MIT degree in a cheap frame. The whole sad collection of a life reduced to objects. Elena didn't come out of the office to say goodbye. Her secretary, Patricia, a woman who'd watched me grow the company and had always been kind, gave me a sympathetic look as I walked past. "I'm sorry, Marcus. This isn't right." I just smiled. "It's okay, Patricia. Everything works out the way it's supposed to." Dave walked me down to the lobby, through the sleek modern space I'd helped design when we renovated 2 years ago, past the reception desk with the Castellano Logistics logo, a logo I'd commissioned from a designer friend. through the glass doors and into the parking lot where my Tesla sat baking in the afternoon sun. "Tough break, man," Dave said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "Yeah," I said, "real tough." I drove home to the apartment I'd been staying in since I moved out of our house 3 days ago. Elena had asked me to leave, to give her space to grieve. Now I understood she just wanted me out of the way while she consolidated power. The apartment was a sterile corporate rental, with white walls and furniture that looked like it came from a hotel liquidation sale. It smelled like cleaning products and disappointment. The manila envelope was sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning, too angry to deal with it, too hurt to even look at it. Now I picked it up, pulled out the documents inside, and read them again, and for a fourth time just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. 2 years ago, Richard Castellano had restructured the company. He'd created a complicated corporate entity with multiple classes of stock. He'd kept 51% for himself, given 20% to Elena, distributed 10% among key employees, and given another 10% to various family members. The remaining 9% he'd sold to outside investors. But that's what everyone thought had happened. What Richard had actually done was far more interesting. He'd transferred 34% of his controlling shares to me through a shell corporation, keeping only 17% for himself. Combined with the 5% he'd given me openly as part of my compensation package 2 years ago, I owned 39% of Castellano Logistics. The week before he died, Richard did something even more remarkable. He'd bought back the 9% from the outside investors at a premium, then immediately transferred it to me through the same shell corporation. The paperwork had been filed, but not yet processed when he had his heart attack.
I owned 48% of the company. Elena owned 20%. Richard's estate owned 17%. Everyone else combined owned 15%. But wait, it gets better. Richard's will, which had been read privately to Elena but not filed publicly yet, left his remaining 17% to me. Not to Elena, not to his sister or his cousins or his drinking buddies. To me, his son-in-law, who he'd barely tolerated at family dinners, but who had tripled the value of his life's work. The letter that came with the documents explained everything in Richard's blunt, no-nonsense handwriting. "Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and Elena probably thinks she's in charge. Let her think it for a bit. She needs to learn some lessons about power and loyalty. You earned this. You built this. Don't let anyone take it from you. The paperwork process is on Monday. See you at the board meeting, Richard." Even from beyond the grave, the old man was teaching lessons. I had to respect that. The math was simple now. As of Monday morning, when Richard's estate paperwork and the final share transfer were processed, I would own 65% of Castellano Logistics. Elena would own 20%. Everyone else would own 15% combined. But I wanted to be absolutely sure, so I'd spent the last 2 days with Richard's attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Reeves, who'd been handling the Castellano family business for 30 years, going over every document, every filing, every piece of paper. She'd smiled at me like a shark smiling at a wounded fish. "Monday morning, 9 a.m., it all processes," she'd confirmed. "And yes, you'll have controlling interest, majority shareholder. You can do whatever you want." "Whatever I want," I'd repeated. "Whatever you want," she'd echoed. Then she'd leaned forward, and her smile had gotten sharper. "Richard told me something before he died. He said Elena was going to fire you the moment she thought she had power. He said she'd been planning it for months, getting her ducks in a row. He wanted to see if he was right about her." "He was testing her," I said flatly. "He was testing both of you. You passed. She didn't." Now, sitting in my depressing rental apartment, eating Chinese takeout straight from the container because I couldn't be bothered to use plates, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. Because if Elena had been planning this for months, she hadn't been planning alone. It took me 4 hours and 3 more containers of lo mein, but I found what I was looking for. Elena had been careful, but not careful enough. Email records that IT had backed up showed a pattern of communication with Derek Ashford, the company's VP of operations. Derek was 42, divorced, drove a Porsche he couldn't quite afford, and apparently had been sleeping with my wife for at least 6 months. The emails were detailed, disturbingly detailed. They'd been planning this whole thing together,
waiting for Richard to die, pushing me out, consolidating power, taking the company public and cashing out for tens of millions of dollars. They'd even picked out a beach house in the Bahamas they were going to buy together. I probably should have felt something reading those emails. Heartbreak, betrayal, rage. Instead, I felt that same cold clarity. Elena hadn't loved me in a long time, maybe ever. I'd been useful, the tech guy who could modernize Daddy's company, the respectable husband who looked good at charity galas. Now I wasn't useful anymore, so I was being discarded. Fine. But Derek Ashford was a problem. As VP of Operations, he had influence with the other executives in the board. If I just walked into the board meeting and announced I was majority shareholder, they could make things difficult. Not impossible, the law was on my side, but difficult and expensive and time-consuming. I needed leverage. Saturday morning, I drove to the office. The building was mostly empty on weekends, just a skeleton security crew. I still had my access card. They hadn't deactivated it yet because Elena was apparently too busy celebrating her new empire to handle basic security protocols. I went straight to Derek's office. The guy was sloppy, kept his computer password on a post-it note stuck under his keyboard. Real genius, that one. It took me 20 minutes to find what I needed. Evidence that Derek had been embezzling from the company for the last 18 months. Nothing huge, he was too smart for that, but a steady stream of fake vendor invoices, padded expense reports, kickbacks from suppliers, maybe $400,000 total spread across dozens of transactions. I copied everything to a thumb drive, then did something that would have made my MIT ethics professor weep. I created a fake email account and sent an anonymous tip to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, complete with all the evidence. Then I sent a copy to the company's insurance provider and our largest client, a national retail chain that had strict ethical clauses in their contracts. By Monday morning, Derek Ashford would be toxic, probably facing federal charges, definitely fired and unemployable. Elena would lose her co-conspirator and her boyfriend in one shot. Was it overkill? Maybe. Did I care? Not even a little bit. Sunday, I went to visit my mother. She lives in a modest house in Queens that I bought her 5 years ago after my startup sold. She's a retired nurse, raised me by myself after my father died when I was 10, and is generally the best person I know. "You look terrible," she said, by way of greeting, which is how you know someone really loves you. "Thanks, Ma." She made tea, sat me down at her kitchen table, and waited. My mother has this supernatural ability to just sit in silence until you tell her what's wrong. It's more effective than any interrogation technique. "Elena fired me," I said finally, 4 days after her father's funeral. My mother's face didn't change, but her teacup clinked a little harder against the saucer when she set it down. "I see. You're not surprised." "I never liked her," my mother said flatly. "Too much smile, not enough eyes." "You could have mentioned that before I married her. Would you have listened?" She had a point. I told her everything, the affair, the embezzlement, the shares, the Monday morning bombshell. My mother listened without interrupting, which meant it was serious. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Your father would be proud of you," she said finally. "For getting divorced?" "For building something real and not letting anyone steal it from you." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But Marcus, after Monday, after you do what you need to do, let it go. Take your company, fix the damage, but don't let anger eat you alive. That woman isn't worth it."
"I know, Ma. Do you?" I didn't answer because I wasn't sure I did. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystal-clear sunshine that felt like the universe was mocking me. I put on my best suit, Tom Ford, navy blue, the one Elena had bought me for our 5th anniversary. I wanted to look good for this. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Elena had called it herself on Friday afternoon, claiming there were urgent matters to discuss regarding the company's future direction. She had no idea how urgent things were about to get. I arrived at 9:30 and went straight to Miss Reeves' office. She was waiting with a folder full of documents, all freshly processed and notarized. "Everything's official as of 9 a.m. this morning," she said. "You're the majority shareholder of Castellano Logistics. Congratulations." "Thanks," I said. "Let's go ruin my wife's day." The boardroom was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was a power room, designed to intimidate. 7 board members were already seated, Elena at the head of the table, in her father's chair, Derek Ashford to her right, looking smug, and 5 others who I'd worked with for years. Patricia was in the corner with her laptop, taking minutes. They all looked up when I walked in. Elena's face went from surprised to annoyed in about half a second. "Marcus, this is a closed board meeting," she said. "You're no longer an employee, so—" "Actually," I interrupted, pulling out a chair directly across from her and sitting down, "I'm a shareholder. I have every right to be here." "You own 5%, Derek sneered. "That doesn't get you a board seat." "You're right, Derek. 5% doesn't." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. "But 65% does." The room went silent. Elena stared at me like I'd started speaking Mandarin. "I'm sorry, what?" she finally managed. 65%, I repeated slowly. "I own 65% of Castellano Logistics. Your father transferred controlling interest to me over the past 2 years, with the final shares from his estate processing this morning. Miss Reeves can confirm." I looked at Richard's attorney, who nodded. "It's all legal and properly filed. Mr. Chen is the majority shareholder and, as of this morning, the rightful chairman of the board." Elena's face had gone pale. That's impossible. My father would never." "Your father," I said, and my voice was colder than I had intended, "spent 6 years watching me rebuild his company while you spent 6 years planning to stab me in the back the moment he was gone. He knew exactly what you were doing, Elena. He was testing you. You failed." Derek started to stand up. "Now wait just a goddamn minute." "Sit down, Derek. Or actually, don't, because you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and you should probably call a lawyer. The FBI is very interested in talking to you about vendor fraud and embezzlement." His face went from red to white. "You can't prove?" "I can prove everything. I found everything, and I sent everything to everyone who matters." I smiled at him, and it wasn't a nice smile. "You're done." I nodded to the security guards who'd been waiting outside. They came in and took Derek by the arms. He was sputtering, threatening lawsuits, claiming conspiracy. No one paid attention. The other board members were staring at the documents Miss Reeves was distributing, verifying that everything I'd said was true. Elena just sat there, frozen. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. "As majority shareholder, I'm calling for an immediate vote on new leadership. I nominate myself as chairman and CEO." "All in favor?" Miss Reeves asked. Every hand went up except Elena's. She was staring at me with something between horror and hatred. "Motion carries," Miss Reeves said. "Mr. Chen is officially chairman and CEO of Castellano Logistics." I looked around the table at the shocked faces. "Thank you all for your vote of confidence. Now let's talk about the future of this company. First item, Elena Castellano is removed from all operational roles, effective immediately. She retains her 20% ownership but has no authority over company decisions." "You bastard." Second item, we're conducting a full audit of all departments. Anyone who was involved in Derek's schemes or knew about them and said nothing will be terminated. This company was built on integrity, and we're going back to that. I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and looked directly at my wife. Ex-wife, soon enough. "You wanted to fire me because I wasn't useful anymore," she said. "You thought you could take everything your father and I built and cash out with your boyfriend. You thought I was just the tech guy, easy to discard. But here's what you didn't understand, Elena. Your father didn't give you this company because he didn't trust you with it. He gave it to me because I earned it. Every late night, every weekend, every innovation that saved this company, I earned this." She was crying now, mascara running down her face. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt tired. "This meeting is adjourned. Patricia, please have divorce papers drawn up and sent to Mrs. Castellano's attorney. We're done here." I walked out of the boardroom, down the elevator, and out to my car. My phone was already ringing. Reporters, investors, employees who'd heard what happened. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called my mother. "It's done," I said when she answered. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "Empty." "Good," she said. "That means you can start filling yourself back up with better things. Come to dinner tonight. I'm making dumplings." "Yeah, Ma, I'll be there."
3 months later, Castellano Logistics had a new name, Castellano Chen Industries. We'd expanded into new markets, acquired 2 competitors, and our stock price had increased 40%. Derek Ashford was awaiting trial on federal fraud charges. Elena had sold half her shares to me at a significant loss because she needed cash for her legal fees in the divorce. I was working reasonable hours, dating a woman I'd met at a tech conference who actually seemed to like me for me, and generally trying to figure out what the hell I wanted my life to look like. Richard Castellano's picture hung in the lobby, right next to the new company logo. The plaque underneath read, "Richard Castellano, founder. He taught us that loyalty and competence matter more than blood."
I think the old bastard would have appreciated that. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I went too far, if I was too harsh, too ruthless, too willing to destroy rather than just walk away. Then I remember standing in my office that I'd earned, being told I was fired by a woman who'd promised to love me forever, and I think, no. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. Sometimes revenge isn't about cruelty, it's about justice. And sometimes, just sometimes, the tech guy wins. My name is Marcus Chen, I'm 34 years old, and I own a company worth $80 million. But more importantly, I learned that the best revenge isn't just taking back what's yours, it's becoming someone who can never be discarded again. Monday was fun, after all. Thanks for sticking with Marcus through this wild ride. If you enjoyed watching him turn the tables on Elena and reclaim everything he built, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of epic revenge and justice served cold. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from right now. Are you Team Marcus, or do you think you went too far? I love seeing our community grow, and we've got amazing viewers from all over the world. Special shout out to our incredible viewers from the United States and the Philippines. You guys make up a huge part of this community, and your comments always bring the best perspectives on these stories. Whether you're watching from New York or Manila, from California or Cebu, from Texas or Davao, you're all part of what makes this channel awesome. So, comment below, where are you watching from and what would you have done in Marcus's situation? Let's get this comment section buzzing. See you in the next story, and remember, never underestimate the quiet ones. They're usually the ones with all the power. Peace out.